Do you remember the trend called sad beige moms? It's been heavily criticized lately, and people often see it as kind of obsessive. And honestly, it's not really relevant anymore, at least not like it was a couple of years ago. But it actually has a lot in common with today's pink aesthetic trends, which, by the way, aren't as relevant now as they were just in 2024-2025. Trends move that fast, and that's exactly why I wanted to talk about this. While Sad Beige Moms was really more of a millennial thing, focused on creating a minimalistic, clean, neutral space, pink aesthetics are more of a Gen Z trend. But instead of aiming for minimalism, they lean into femininity and even a sense of nostalgia, especially tied to childhood dreams, with all the cute, childlike, and even vintage elements they constantly use. That said, both trends tend to rely on very monochromatic color palettes, with little variation, which can end up feeling a bit boring and cold. They push you to buy products that fit the aesthetic, which you'll probably have to replace in a year or two because, at the end of the day, these are really defined styles that just aren't flexible enough for the long run. From what I've seen, these pink aesthetics tap into a fantasy that a lot of women have. The idea of living a slow, cozy life surrounded by things that feel visually pleasing and personal. It's about creating a space that feels safe, healthy, and rooted in self-love, all while expressing femininity. But I've also noticed some details that don't fully sit right with me. For one, almost everything seems to center on promoting unnecessarily expensive pink products. I call them pricey little trinkets, whether it's because of the pink tags or just straight up brand marketing. There's also a strong presence of elements we usually associate with childhood, like bows, hearts, and an almost exclusive use of pastel pink tones. And overall, it tends to feel a bit aspirational. Not just because of the aesthetic itself, but because of the lifestyle it's often tied to. So, since when did lifestyle and self-care become equivalent to obedient consumption disguised as an aesthetic? And since when those aesthetics have to be reduced to consuming just one single color? Your lifestyle is how you interact with and behave in your life. Your routines, habits, outlook, goals, values, consumption, and tastes. So yeah. Aesthetics are totally part of our lifestyle and super important for our well-being. An aesthetic is anything that gives us pleasure when we perceive an object, in a really broad sense, through our senses, touch, sight, or sound. This pleasure comes from how harmonious it seems to us, due to its relationship and proportion with other elements, and what it makes us feel, experience, or think, ultimately making it a significant object with emotional value for us. The whole scope of having a healthier lifestyle and aiming for an aesthetic that makes you feel good is way too broad and deep to just narrow it down to material goods that are only one color and routines that aren't very accessible. I mean, things like doing weekly pink face masks, training for Pilates in all pink yoga gear, and carrying a branded pink tumbler as a self-love activity. I'm not sure if I should consider these things now called aesthetics as a type of urban tribe, but they definitely have enough characteristics to fit the description. They are young communities who mainly share similar tastes in visuals and consumption habits. They promote and chase a lifestyle focused on self-love, either through self-care and looking for a more relaxed, slower life, expressing femininity through the color pink and elements associated with being delicate. Urban tribes emerge from subcultures that evolve according to specific times and places. Generally, they represent and express a resistance or challenge to cultural hegemony, establishing aesthetics, ideologies, and tastes as rules totally distinct from the norm. And this helps form communities because they are identifiable. They are still part of the market, but they consume differently. Right now, we live in a society where the culture basically tells you that your productivity and career achievements are way more important than your personal life. This forces us into a super fast-paced lifestyle, which leads to isolation and relationships falling apart. It even makes starting a family tough. Why? Because your time is seen as more valuable when you're being productive than when you're living life for yourself or the people you care about. This culture also insists that productivity is the route to progress, something you have to chase to be a worthwhile person. And for this culture, progress is all about snagging expensive, hard to get material things. Luxuries, basically, that make society see you as successful. I just want to clarify one thing. I am definitely not romanticizing poverty or marginalization, because everyone deserves decent, affordable housing, which is getting harder and harder to access, better healthcare, education, and a better job market. I'm simply highlighting the trap this culture sets up where it confuses quality of life with buying status defining products. So, these girls are definitely looking for a lifestyle that's totally different from what you see in most media. They show off a slow life focused on self-care, usually by sharing long morning or evening routines. That might mean doing their skincare, having a ritual for making coffee and breakfast, journaling, going for a walk, heading to a Pilates class, or at night taking a bath with a book and a nice drink, or just watching a movie for a really cozy moment. Honestly, that's what every woman dreams of being able to do in this super chaotic and stressful life. This is all wrapped up in a totally pink environment as an expression of femininity. Basically, a kind of simple concept of femininity that we experienced and wanted when we were little 2 decades ago. Fulfilling a childhood fantasy that way. Because now that you're an adult, you can buy all the pretty things you used to dream about, creating a sense of refuge and escape from the adult reality we live in. It's basically the girl with adult money meme. But there's a huge inconsistency, because these girls aren't actually sharing their real lifestyle and preferred aesthetic. Objectively speaking, everything they share is a lie. They share the most aesthetic and perfect parts, but it's not their lives. It's just scenes and products. We have to remember that everything we see is meticulously captured. It's produced content, not a reflection of their actual life. It's just entertainment content, and there are a couple of ways to entertain people on short-form social media. Either by exaggerating to stand out and spark outrage, which encourage interaction, or by making the content highly stimulating so we can stop watching. And most importantly, it's a business, which is why they focus so much on products. Basically, their content is just advertising backed by well camouflaged and sophisticated marketing that makes you, the user, believe they understand your tastes and lifestyle, when actually it's the opposite. They are dictating new ones. This is one of the reasons why, for me at least, social media stopped making sense or lost its purpose years ago, which is why I haven't used it for almost a year now, except for YouTube and Pinterest, because supposedly the main point was to connect with people, share ideas, communicate, and interact with others to form communities. Even though there are still accounts that add a ton of value, their content is fun and cheers you up, it's informative, and it makes you think and reflect. Little by little, it's turned into space for pure validation through appearances, with algorithms that boost and celebrate high dopamine content. It's completely adapted to the dominant culture of consumption and productivity, and it's basically become a vehicle for advertising products or services, to the extent that the content itself is just straight up advertising now. For example, it's really frustrating for me personally that when I try to read comments and opinions, all I see is spammed quotes and keywords instead of actual discussions. Therefore, I can pretty much confirm that this whole thing isn't a real urban tribe, because it doesn't seem like a way to express a genuine identity. Instead, it's just a product of marketing, and frankly, it's pretty harmful because of how misleading it is. I don't doubt that there are some girls who genuinely have this lifestyle and aesthetic and share it so other girls with similar interests and opportunities can try it out. But generally speaking, it's safe to assume that none of what we see is real. Since this is social media content, it has to be taken to the extreme to actually be entertaining. That means pink food prep, pink cleaning products, pink gadgets, appliances, decorations, clothes, makeup, everything. We have to remember that products are the main stars all the time. And following the current homogeneous culture, this whole thing promotes buying products and doing activities that most women will consider luxuries, but which you need if you want to belong to this aesthetic, live better, and feel better. A perfect example of this is using tons of skincare and hair products, having long routines that are only possible for women who don't need to work or who have enough cash to hire help with daily chores, and where the exercise activities tend to be the most expensive ones, like Pilates, bar, or yoga. Even your daily morning drinks are the priciest options, like matcha. Honestly, instead of being an urban tribe, this just looks like aspirational content. And ironically, all of this can lead to users comparing themselves and feeling frustrated. I don't think I need to bring up exactly how many pink aesthetics there are on social media, mainly because I don't totally get all of them. They've evolved a lot, but broadly speaking, I'll mention the most relevant ones. First up is the bow aesthetic, which is basically just putting pink bows on everything. I think this actually came from the coquette aesthetic, which was more visually complex, leaning into Victorian and romantic vibes. This new version is way simpler and more childish. Then there's the soft girl aesthetic, where pastel pink is the main focus. It's a nostalgic Y2K era style that's more casual, but it still has that childlike vibe. Next, we have pink maximalism. It looks really cool visually, but in my opinion, it's more for a recreational space, not a real home. It's way too stimulating, and honestly, that's the last thing a home needs these days. Not that you need everything to be beige to have a relaxing space either. Finally, there's the pink princess aesthetic. It's got that rococo style, literally living up to its name by romanticizing our view of the past. It's super feminine and follows a philosophy all about self-care and treating yourself, like relaxing in the tub or getting tons of sleep. These aesthetics and lifestyles are naturally going to shift over time, since the market adapts. When content stops being entertaining or satisfying specific needs, the market just develops a new trend, something a little fresher and novel enough. This automatically makes the old one outdated, and production for that aesthetic stops. It's always best to look for timeless styles that have stood the test of time, ones that are easy to use and maintain, because the market decides which products are in and out. You aren't really free when it comes to your style. You have to adjust to what's available and adapt it to what works for you and makes you feel good. Pink has been used as a feminine expression in these aesthetics, but it wasn't always seen as something female or feminine. We have the example of the second half of the 18th century in the West, especially in France, during the Rococo period, where pink was tremendously popular among aristocrats, associated with power and wealth. A good example of this is the contribution to culture and art by King Louis XV of France and his mistress, Madame de Pompadour. From her came the background color, rose pompadour, which was invented by Sèvres Porcelain in 1757 and named in her honor. She was a great advocate for the porcelain made in Sèvres and helped solidify it as a luxury item. She and Louis XV supported the factory's foundation. The association of pink with girls and blue with boys began during the second half of the 20th century, after World War II, starting in the children's market. Before that, children's clothing was differentiated by gender through cut, pockets, images, and decoration, but not by color. Both pink and blue used to be just baby colors, but by the early 1950s, colors began being used to distinguish gender, alongside elements like flowers and delicate trims becoming associated with the feminine. This wasn't limited to children's toys and clothes. Feminine influences were also present, like Mamie Eisenhower, who was known for preferring pink in fashion and decoration long before she became First Lady. So much so that a color was named Mamie Pink in her honor. The iconic moment was in 1953 when First Lady Mamie Eisenhower wore a pink dress for the inauguration, which the press dubbed First Lady Pink. Another example is Marilyn Monroe, wearing the iconic shocking pink silk dress while performing Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend in the musical Gentlemen Prefer Blondes in 1953. And there's more. Barbie was born in 1959, solidifying pink as a symbol of accessible femininity and glamour. We shouldn't forget the cultural impact and how the perception of pink changed with the tragedy of November 22, 1963. The day John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Jackie wore her most iconic look, a pink Chanel suit with a pillbox hat, which remained in the collective imagination as a symbol of elegance, femininity, power, and national tragedy, shifting pink away from being purely an infantile color. Shortly after, Yuko Shimizu designed Hello Kitty in Japan in 1974 for Sanrio's character lineup, debuting in the United States in 1976 when Sanrio opened a gift-gate store in San Jose, California. Even though Hello Kitty's favorite color is red, much of her merchandise is pink, further promoting the color as feminine and also kawaii. By the 1980s, the idea that pink was feminine, cheerful, innocent, and youthful was completely consolidated. In the 2000s, pink became a standard bearer for what it meant to be feminine in pop culture, influenced heavily by figures like Paris Hilton, Britney Spears, and Christina Aguilera, or in entertainment like Legally Blonde and Mean Girls, or brands that amplify this, such as Juicy Couture or Baby Phat. This is where the style currently known as Y2K emerged, which personally I find to be among the ugliest aesthetics and fashion trends ever. I repeat, just my opinion. From the 2010s onward, the fourth wave of feminism impacted and redefined the use of pink, reclaiming the color for protest, irony, and empowerment. The stereotype of what it means to be a woman started to dilute, and the use of pink was no longer linked to simple stereotypes of femininity. Although pink hasn't been seen as an infantile color for girls for quite some time, the intention behind these aesthetics is precisely to look girly, soft, childish, innocent, delicate, and hyper-feminine. If you want to look feminine, you can do it in many ways and colors. It's not limited to just one shade. If you love pink, you can wear it throughout your life in many ways, and it doesn't automatically imply infantilization. Intention and elements rarely influence perception. Also, a fondness for certain animated characters or a fascination with that animal doesn't need to be judged as a childish gesture. I remember my grandmother decorated her patio with little frogs, and the kitchen too, which I recall very fondly. The criticism is aimed more at the intention behind how the aesthetic is defined, which doesn't just focus on visual elements but directly influences a more childish behavior and lifestyle. You don't just see it, you live it. Previously, in the former productivist capitalism, the goal was to satisfy real needs. Once the market became saturated, new needs began to be created. And to perpetuate consumption, adult behavior towards the market developed to resemble that of adolescents. That is, consuming for pleasure, impulsively, where the product consumed has very little relation to its utility or purpose, but instead offers small, momentary satisfactions. Now, society fails to satisfy real needs, such as housing, health, education, security, and family. As a consequence, the individual becomes less committed to family and community. The current market strategy is to make you escape real problems through the creation and satisfaction of desires, heavily relying on nostalgia because the consumer finds stability in the memory of past experiences. This promotes useless consumption that achieves pleasure for only a very short period of time. It is no longer something useful for one's quality of life, much less something durable. The impact is not only on consumption, but also on culture. A clear example is the collective desire not to age and to always look younger, which the market now satisfies through skin treatments and cosmetic surgery. Another example is the language of politics, which has been highly simplified or based on memes, or the fact that what thrives most in cinema are remakes, with nostalgia acting as a safe space for many young adults and a guaranteed successful venture. Furthermore, adults have adopted less mature and infantile behaviors as a defense mechanism against a hostile world, and because the vision of life has been shaped according to what we can achieve with our labor. We can no longer aspire to own a home or truly have a good quality of life, so now we aspire to have all our products in pink to brighten today a little. Having everything in a single color with a monochromatic combination, it means one color in different shades, or an analogous option, 3 colors adjacent on the color wheel, is possible and functional when you seek a softer look or want to give your eyes a rest. But it's not the only option. Furthermore, a monochromatic aesthetic doesn't mean every element must be a single shade, as that can result in a look that is boring, cold, and very inflexible. Based on color theory, there are more ways to combine colors, and you can adjust them using shades, tints, and tones. Complementary, 2 colors opposite each other on the color wheel, which is used to create a strong contrast. For example, pink and green. Triadic, creating a less intense contrast with 3 colors equally spaced on the color wheel, which turns out to be much more versatile, like pink, green, and blue. Tetradic, choosing 4 proportionally spaced colors on the color wheel, where you select one color as primary and the others as accents to avoid oversaturation, like pink, yellow, green, and purple. This one is harder to implement. Therefore, the general recommendation is to use a more neutral color as a base, such as a type of white, beige, or gray, and add perhaps 1 or 2 complementary accent colors, like pink or green, in the shades that relax you most, preferably leaning toward the desaturated side, and using brighter colors only as accents. This adds volume and visual interest. Achieving a good aesthetic isn't just about following color theory. Aesthetics are experienced with all our senses, through touch, sound, smells, and tastes. An example of this is seeking out natural textures and materials that are relaxing, durable, and beautiful, such as wood, stone, cotton, and plants. It means living in or surrounding yourself with environments that have low noise pollution, eating fresh and minimally processed foods, or being surrounded by natural scents, like those of essential oils, fruits, or flowers. All of this brings life and peace. If the goal is to have everything pastel pink, which is an unnatural result, it requires searching for artificial and plastic options, which reduce quality in every sense. Poor quality paints, microplastic pollution, dyes that are extremely harmful to health, and the inconvenience of the pink tax, among others. Choose or mix some timeless styles, such as glam, Japandi, minimalism, Scandinavian, rustic, industrial, or even maximalism if it truly makes you feel good. Do this without falling into an obsession over precision or wanting to copy and paste. Rather, feel free to develop the aesthetic that makes you feel comfortable, one that flows, allows you to experiment, and is adapted to your routines and needs, without overthinking it or neglecting its importance. They promote routines that are costly in both time and money for skincare, health with supplements or expensive drinks like matcha, which is healthy but not essential, and fitness through costly disciplines like Pilates. The focus is on making everything you do for yourself and your health follow the most flashy and expensive path, which is totally impractical. Here are just a few examples of how you can dedicate time to your well-being without needing a huge amount of resources. Strength training at home with basic calisthenics. You don't need equipment, just time and some workout videos on YouTube. In fact, it's the most recommended starting point if you're new to physical training and at a basic level. The first goal should be to control your body with basic and compound movements, like squats and push-ups, and to improve your balance and general strength. If you progressed past that stage, you can continue training at a conventional gym to increase your load and weights, or join a studio for the type of exercise you enjoy most. And you can stick with that for the rest of your life and continue to progress in your strength and physical capacity. You don't need more expensive or exclusive activities. If you enjoy pole dance, Pilates, tennis, or ballet and have the financial means, go for it. I'm just saying that being more expensive doesn't make it more effective. It's just another way to train. If you want healthier skin, you can take care of it without buying tons of products and masks. It's scary to see how people apply layers of products every day. Start by using sunscreen. Getting morning sun exposure and wearing a hat and sunglasses in the afternoon is an excellent way to protect your skin. Don't tan. Stay well hydrated. Sleep 7 to 8 hours. Don't smoke. Eat a diet based on fresh, varied and minimally processed foods, and try to manage stress as much as possible. The best thing you can do is consult your dermatologist to define your skincare routine, not an influencer. Matcha isn't essential. It tastes great, but it's very expensive and shouldn't be a priority in your pursuit of health. You can drink coffee with similar benefits, teas, mate, or fruit-infused water. You can make hot chocolate with milk, cocoa, and no sugar, or iced coffees with cinnamon and a little milk. Eat berries occasionally, green leafy vegetables like chard and spinach, and generally eat better and more varied foods. The habits of reading and writing are activities that invite reflection, imagination, and the exploration of our thoughts. The point isn't to force yourself to do it in the name of productivity, like filling a morning planner or reading a How to Get Rich book, but do it little by little to develop better habits. You can gradually incorporate it into the time you dedicate to other habits that aren't good for you. For about 2 months, I've been working on reading for 15 minutes before bed, and it's getting easier all the time. In the beginning, I tried to read, but my head was focused on other thoughts. And little by little, I've been able to focus more on the book. One of the most important points for a better quality of life And something influencers don't mention is social life and interpersonal relationships. Check in with your loved ones often, spend time with friends, and form solid, meaningful relationships. The nicest memories you have are probably from moments you share with someone you care about. Breathe and truly seek a slower life that is more connected to reality. Try taking dopamine breaks and reducing overstimulation, because this keeps us in a constant state of frustration and a need to consume content. Take time to enjoy and appreciate nature, or find a hobby that allows you to learn new things and relax. Interesting things happen in real life. We're not denying that quality of life has been negatively impacted by external factors we can control despite our best efforts, such as the feeling of uncertainty, rising housing costs, city infrastructure, more precarious working conditions, pollution, and so on. For some people, due to their living conditions, it can be almost impossible to train or cook. The key is to incorporate good habits little by little, adjusting them to individual possibilities. For example, if you have little time to train, you can look for options like HIIT. The goal isn't perfection, but simply starting with one good action that will benefit you long term. Once you start, you create a beautiful kind of momentum to keep incorporating actions that improve your quality of life. Pink will always be around. It's a beautiful color. I love pastel pink with cotton blue, so it's not about ditching it because the aesthetic is aging, expiring, or because people criticize it for being childish. Pink is timeless. It's not going anywhere, and the trick is to use and enjoy it without overcomplicating things, by pairing it with timeless style so it stays versatile and doesn't look dated quickly. Wanting everything in pastel pink with bows to achieve an aesthetic environment actually shows a fear of composing with a variety of colors and textures, besides being a very costly decision. Plus, to me, it ends up looking very cold in that specific shade of pink. With so many warmer pinks out there, I'm not sure why that was the tone that got promoted. All of this has just been my personal opinion and reflection, and for me, aesthetics should make us feel relaxed. They shouldn't tie us down to the idea that the next thing you buy has to be a certain style or color. Because if it does, it just breaks the whole fantasy and leads to constant stress. It seems contradictory to me that someone should have to adjust to an aesthetic, instead of being free to develop their own aesthetic and style. To choose personally, yes, with guides and references, but not with a manual. I hope you liked my first video. I want to read what you think about this phenomenon, whether you have a specific aesthetic and what made you fall in love with it, or if you change styles a lot every year because you just love everything. I'll see you in the next one, and thank you so much for watching.